more importantly, what you can do to get involved. But first, some announcements. So the NA Mega Meetup is happening May 13th to 15th. And while in-person registration has already closed, you can still sign up to attend virtually. So check out the Meetup's website for more info, and Danit is going to put the registration link in chat now. So let's get that link in chat. Awesome. So there's the link for you guys to register for the Mega Meetup if you want to attend virtually for the NA Mega Meetup. That again is May 13th to 15th. And my second very special announcement is to make sure you tune in 3 weeks on April 24th. We're going to have a special edition of Office Hours where we're hosting a Q&A session with Waze's new CPO, Steph Hannon. So you can already sign up and submit a question now on the forum and in Center Code. So make sure you check it out. And Danit, let's throw that link up there as well so everyone knows where they can sign up for that special event and ask questions to our new CPO. I'm really excited for this, you guys, and I really hope you not only give her a warm Waze welcome, but that you really give her some tough questions for her first encounter with the community. I think we need to show her what we're all about. So with that, it's now my pleasure to pass the mic over to Anat. So Anat, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, everyone. And thank you very much for joining. My name is Anat, and I'm the Crisis Response Lead at Waze. I'm grateful that you came today to hear more about what we do at the Waze Crisis Response. So in the next 20 to 30 minutes, I will share with you our work in the Crisis Response team, who we work with, what type of information do we share on the map. Then I will walk you through some crisis events trends and a case study, a tropical storm Ida that recently hit the United States. So let's learn a little bit more about the Waze Crisis Response Team and the amazing and important role that you, the amazing community, is playing. So here's your impact in numbers. You are amazing volunteer community with over 100,000 active map editors volunteers in 185 countries around the world. You are highly dedicated editors. You help us put information on the map. You help us get the most reliable real-time information during crisis and not during crisis. And within this large community, there is a smaller community, a first responder community of about 125 first responders in more than 50 countries around the world who act as POCs for Waze during crisis events. And I will share in a few slides from now how can you join this amazing community and work with us during crisis events. So besides the amazing community, the volunteer community, besides your amazing work, we also, as the Waze Crisis Response Team, bring together information from different types of users. So we have on the road our Waze users, the drivers, who report what they see real time on the map, on the ground. Then we have you, our amazing community volunteers. You share information on the map, you resolve problems that other drivers put on the map, and you keep it as most accurate as possible. We also work with Waze partners that are made of the public sector and the private sector organizations. Our public sector organizations is the government and NGOs who join us and keep their citizens with most helpful and up-to-date information on the map. The private sector is also sharing with us information and keeps us with valuable information during crisis events or prior. So we at the Waze Crisis Response Team take information from all of these type of users and put it on the map. So how do we make this happen? It works like magic. So the Waze Crisis Response Team, and now I will just introduce what we do and what type of events we support. So we at Waze Crisis Response, we support crisis events that have a significant negative impact on traffic and on drivers. And when I say crisis events, I mean two major types of crisis events. So we have natural disasters, which is earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, floods. And we have also man-made crisis events, which can be bridge collapses, global conflicts, fuel shortages, and any other man-made event that you can think about. So once we launch a crisis response, we have three major pillars that we keep on our mind. So the first, which is the most important thing that we do, is we reach out to partners and to communities around the world, and we ask them for information. So during a crisis event, we collect information from official sources, and we also scan the news and publisher websites to understand what is happening during a crisis event. Then, once we gather and collect this information, we make it accessible on the Waze map. We work with different types of users, and we make it accessible to drivers and to users during a crisis event. And the third pillar, which is important as the first two, is to respond quickly. Crisis events are evolved in different types of ways, and we need to make sure that the information that we collect is accessible to users as soon as possible. This is why the Waze Crisis Team is working 24/7 with the different types of users and put this information on the map. So during crisis events, who contribute to this actual information flow? So the community volunteers can report on crisis events, put information, real-time information on the map to keep their communities safe. The other types of contributors that we have is our partners. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have the public sector and the private sector work really hard to keep their citizens safe. Also, during a crisis event, drivers can contribute their information from the roads. They can report on problems and hazards that they see from the ground. And there's also us. We scan 24/7 the news and publish our websites, and we're trying to understand where is the information, where is the event is going, and what type of useful information we can get and put on the map so we can keep people safe. So I keep saying information. What type of information we actually share during a crisis event? So the first type of information, which I assume that you have already seen on the map, is road closures. Road closure information can be shared with us during a crisis event through three ways. If you're a partner, you can set up an API and then share road closure information with us ongoingly. Either it's during a crisis event or in prior crisis event. You, as the web map editors, can add road closure information to the map using the WME, which I assume that many of you already did it. And the last but not least way of sharing with us road closure information is by emailing this information to the Waze Crisis Response Team, and then the team will put it on the map. The next valuable information that we share during crisis event is emergency shelters. So this type of information is more sensitive. We can get it only from official sources, and it can be shared with us using an email. So many of our partners share with us shelter information prior crisis event, and then we just can activate it during a crisis event. But you can always share with us emergency shelter information by emailing it to the Waze Crisis Response Team. Once we get emergency shelter information and we put it on the map, we send a push notification to our users, notifying them that they have emergency shelters available around their area. Once the information is on the map, users can also find this information by searching help in the Waze app. And the third type of information that we share using during a crisis event is evacuation zone information. So this is a bit tricky. Evacuation zone information is a zone that the government decided that should be evacuated. Once we get evacuation zone on the map, users will see the pop-up notification that you can see on the screen notifying them that they are trying to navigate into an active evacuation zone. When a driver can see this pop-up, he can decide whether he wants to continue driving into the active evacuation zone or change the destination and route out of the evacuation zone. If this information is shared with us prior to a crisis event, we will route users around the area. But in most crisis events, we don't know if there will be evacuation zone, and if it's a dynamic one, Waze will not be able to navigate users around the zone itself. Either way, users will see this pop-up notification and will be mindful about their destination. Another type of information that we put on the map is flood prediction. So this is relatively new information that we put on the map. There was a really cool collaboration between the Norfolk, Virginia government and a nonprofit startup called FloodMap. And they created a tool that predicts floods and notifying users around the affected area that some of the roads might be flooded. So this is a great example of how Waze can bring together the public sector and the private sector and help drivers during crisis events. And as you can see, the media is very interested in these issues as it's relevant and happening all over the world. In November 2021, there was a crisis event in the UK of a storm that hit the UK and Ireland. Once we launched a crisis response, we informed users around that area and we brought awareness by showing a ETA pop-up notification to drivers who tried to navigate during the storm. And we did it to keep them safe and help them to be mindful during the extreme weather changes. So this is an example of a natural disaster crisis events that we supported. And here you can see a different type of crisis event, which is man-made event. Also in the UK, around 8 months ago, during 2021, UK faced limited supplies of fuel. We launched a crisis response, and what we did is we encouraged users in their local communities to upload information in the Waze map about fuel supplies and fuel prices. So this is a great example of us helping you, and you are helping the community to get the most helpful information during crisis events. Now I'll share with you a few slides about the events that we supported in the recent years and how you contributed. So 2022 has started pretty harsh. We already supported 43 crisis events, and we only on April. So it's a pretty high number of crisis events that we supported. And as you can see, from 2016 until now, we support more and more crisis events. And the reason why we can support more and more crisis events is because we can collaborate with you and with our partners and bring helpful information to the Waze map that can help drivers during crisis events to get useful information and save lives. During 2020, we had a bit less crisis events, but the year after, we supported 30% more crisis events in 2021. And about the different types of crisis events that we support. So the red mark that you see in the last 3 years is wildfire crisis events. In 2021, we supported almost 60 wildfire crisis events, which is more than double compared to 2020. And I mentioned that is because we're heading to the summer. The summer, as you know, it depends on where you're based in the world, but it's a very sensitive time for fires. And we need to be prepared, and we need to make sure that we can collaborate as best as possible before the summer is coming. The second most common event that we support is floods. So for example, in Australia, the summer is more flood related, that has like more flood related crisis events. So we also need to make sure that we know how to support you, your families, and drivers during these types of events. And now I would like to walk you through a case study, a tropical storm Ida that hit the United States on August 2021. It's like a day in a life in the crisis response team during an actual crisis event. So, on August 27, 2021, we received a report from a community member that there is an anticipating event, a storm that will hit the United States. Once we received that report, we launched the crisis response, and the team started to scan the news and try to get as much information as possible from publisher websites and to gather this information and to put it on the map. We also reached out to local partners with this report and asked them for information from the ground. A few hours later, we started to upload real-time road closures to the map. We worked closely with the editors community, with partners, and also the team scanned the news to understand which road will be closed. During that day, we uploaded 108 road closures to the map. A few hours later, a champ from Louisiana reached out to us with heads up that the government will launch an evacuation zone in that area, asking from people to evacuate from their home due to this extreme weather. And this is what actually happened a few hours later. So the Waze Crisis Response Team worked closely with the government and with official sources, received information on 7 evacuation zones. We uploaded this information and we showed a pop-up ETA, as you can see here on the screen, notifying users that they are trying to navigate into an active evacuation zone, letting them the opportunity to change their destination and to route to safety. The next information that we received from official sources from the government was emergency shelter locations. So during that time and the days after the crisis event, we uploaded 58 emergency shelter locations to the Waze map. Once we added this information to the map, we send a push notification to our users, notifying them that there are emergency shelters in their location, and they were able to navigate to those locations and get help and get support. So now that you are aware of what we do here in the Waze Crisis Response and how we operate during a crisis event, I would like to emphasize that we are all in this together. At Waze, we are proud to be the enabler of this whole operation to happen. We're proud that we are able to get information from different type of users, different type of information, and help people save lives and keep themselves safe. The Waze Crisis Response Team is working with hundreds of partners around the world, with local communities around the world, and closely with 125 first responders volunteers in more than 50 countries. We are uniquely positioned in the intersection of this source and proud to be the enabler to provide this tool and provide support and help to people during these crisis events. We can't stop natural crisis events to happen. We can't control the weather, but we can control the way that we respond to these crisis events. So I would like to invite you and join the first responder community. I found this this operation extremely exciting. I feel extremely proud and privileged that I have the opportunity to help people during crisis events, to share information and to keep people from getting hurt, to keep people from losing things that matters to them. And I'm grateful for this opportunity and for this privilege to take part and help people during crisis events. So I think Danit just shared on the chat the form for joining for the Waze Crisis First Responder community. I think it's an amazing opportunity that you can that you can take a part of and share real-time information on the Waze map and help your families, your communities, and yourself during crisis events. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Anat, for joining us. Don't go anywhere. You're still here with me because we're going to go straight to Q&A. So let me make some moves here first. Oh, thank you, Danit, for putting that up. I want to change my screens around so we can have a better view of all of this as well. So let's put this guy up here so that we can see your questions and see your chats. So as Anat said, the First Responders program is really amazing. We put the link right there in the chat for you guys. Please take a moment and fill it out if you're interested in volunteering to be a first responder for your community. What that means is that the crisis team will be in touch with you whenever there's a crisis, a natural disaster, a man-made disaster, anything that happens in your community. You'll be one of the first to know, and then you can work with the crisis team directly, and they'll hook you up with partners that are in your area as well and really help make those connections so that you'll be able to use your power as an editor to help save the rest of your community during the time of a crisis. And yes, and as Dahlia has put in the chat as well, please send us your questions. So here we go for our first one from an anonymous user. Can we ask for special custom push notifications for crisis?
So that's an interesting question. Yes, we can do that if it's someone from the crowd that is on the call. So can they just like unmute themselves and ask for example?
No, we can't have people on the call with us. Okay. I'm sorry. But if they can put it into chat really quick and write like what they thought about that might destroy their anonymity in this one. But that's okay. I think for this sort of thing, like if like for example, if they wanted to have a push for specific shelter locations now on the map or something like that, would that be something that we could help them with? Yeah.
So basically we can customize notifications for crisis. So the person who asked the question can reach out to me. Generally speaking, we are very mindful of the UCOM of the communication that we do during crisis events, because we do want to be very specific with the information that we share on the map and to be very mindful for that. But generally speaking, yes, this is something that can be customized.
Cool. All right, our next question is from Andre. How are routes calculated by areas where road closures are in place in this case? So basically he's asking how routing works when we have closures during a crisis.
So it's very similar to the way that the routing works when it's not a crisis. So just like the routing is not taking a consideration of the road closures when it's routing you to your destination, if I understand the question correctly. So the mechanism as it works on, for example, on traffic events. So when you upload traffic events to the map and add road closures to a traffic event, if the roads are closed, so the users won't be routed through those roads, but in other routes.
The same actually it works the same for the evacuation zone polygons, right, as well, that like if you are picking a route that would otherwise enter the evacuation zone, then routing will route you away from it. And that if you're in the evacuation zone, then you'll get a push saying that you need to leave the area you're in and taking you with the route out, correct? Something like that. That's my layman's
that's okay.
Understanding of it.
Yeah, but it's like it's just like it will work the same as it works not during crisis events or closure information. Yeah,
makes sense. All right, next up from Nate. Evacuation zones are a great way to alert drivers in a large area. This concept could be repurposed for other weather events that affect large areas, such as snowstorms. I think snowstorms are part of the crisis list too,
yes,
right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so evacuation zone is a very delicate feature, I would say. We need to use it very mindfully. But yes, we also support snowstorms, and if there are evacuation zones areas, it also can be used.
This is also something that we use on the closures team, for example, as well, which I know is like just tangentially related to crisis. But during the Super Bowl a few weeks ago, we actually worked with the city of Los Angeles to put up a very similar. We created a polygon to send a push to anyone active in the area that there was going to be traffic for the Super Bowl the next week, which you'd think if you live by the Super Bowl stadium, you might know that that's coming,
Yeah.
but they still asked us, so we complied with our municipal partner there, and we're happy to help them out with that sort of thing. So we can send all sorts of pushes, and it's really focused on what the need is. Let's see if we do even any more questions. All right, from Anonymous. In some crises, cell connectivity can be spotty. Is Waze Crisis Response designed with the understanding that drivers may be unable to submit or receive reports on site, i.e. that their report may not be able to send until they continue driving somewhere that still has connectivity? That's a really good question that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah,
Do
this
you know
is
the
a
answer?
really good question. Yeah, so yes, we can take this maybe offline, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get an answer to this one offline. If any of our other colleagues who are in the chat now might know better, they might be able to answer you in chat. But I will take this question and answer it on the forum and follow up. So next up from William, what is Waze doing about the crisis event in Ukraine?
Yeah, so I was waiting for this question, to be honest. This is a great question because this is a very sensitive crisis event, right? Because it's not only in the Ukraine, it's also in neighboring countries. So we are trying to be helpful as much as possible to the people that are affected from the crisis event in the Ukraine. We work closely with communities and partners in neighboring countries to the Ukraine. We're trying to get from them useful information, such as emergency shelter information that we put on the map. So we put these type of locations in countries such as Poland, Slovakia, Moldova, Hungary, and Czech and Germany, who joined us recently. And we try to navigate people to these emergency shelters to get help. So this is a very sensitive event, and we're trying to be as helpful as much as possible.
And I see that Dahlia responded in the chat to our last question. Danit, if you could back us up back to the reports question. So offline reports do work. I'm assuming this works the same as typical routing when you lose your signal, that if once you've created the route at the beginning of your route and it's loaded into your app, then it's going to continue along that route. While it might not get live updates in routing and it might not be able to receive live data from reports that are happening after you've lost connectivity, the initial route that you selected would still be viable, and then any reports that you file will then be uploaded as soon as you have connectivity back. So you can continue to report even when you don't have signal, and you should still be able to continue the original route as long as you had connectivity in the first place and were able to get a route. All right, let's go back forward. A question from Alan. Having the ability to reverse road direction would be useful for events that have mass emergency evacuations. Example, both directions of an interstate freeway are flowing in one direction. Currently, we can only close the travel on the one direction that is reversed. Ah, interesting. So we can't reverse traffic on a segment that's already programmed to be a certain direction in that case.
It sounds like a very unique use case. It is an interesting question. I think for these types of situations, you can always reach out to the Waze Crisis Response Team by email. Just email the request to the team, and they will be able to walk you through what we can and cannot do.
That's actually a really great point. I'm going to put the Waze Crisis, Waze-Crisis
exactly
at google.com in chat. So there you all are, the email address for Waze Crisis, so you can reach them directly in any emergency situation. So next up from Sketch, is it possible to make a preloaded evacuation zone optionally behave like a non-preloaded evacuation zone?
So I assume that you asked that in terms of routing, right? Because like evacuation zone that will continue to route users to the evacuation zone. I assume that this is what you're asking. Exactly, feature request. So this is an interesting question. We can like we can do that as a technical, like the product is able to do that. It's just for specific crisis events we need to understand if that makes sense, and we can do that. I agree that sometimes the feature of evacuation zone, once it doesn't let users, basically doesn't take the route into evacuation zone as an option, it can be tricky. So yes, the general answer is yes, we can do that.
I think that the other issue here too is that it's really depending on our municipal partners, like which evacuation zones they're authorizing, and if they've changed the polygon for this particular crisis from the time it happened before.
Yeah.
Like, even I understand where you're coming from. Like, if you're in an area that gets annual hurricanes, you might think like, okay, we know the drill. It's going to be this area and this area are going to be flooded, but we actually don't know exactly how the storm is going to fall, and we don't know how the municipality wants to react to it. So our hands are sort of tied a bit there because we need to really follow our partner's lead because they're the ones making these decisions. We're just showing it on the map.
Yeah, and eventually it's just a matter of activating or not activating this evacuation zone. So for this specific event that might happen, you can always reach out to the team and let them know the reasons. And since we are collaborating also with the community, with you and with partners, we can make this decision happen real time.
Cool. And from David, if there is a major crisis, I am, as a first responder, going to be in the mess. Is there going to be an easy access way of reporting other than WME that can be accessed from my cell?
So the main way that you can communicate with the team, with the Waze Crisis Response Team, is through your email. So I agree, this can be if you're in the middle of the mess, so you won't be available to communicate with us, but you can always just email the information that you want to put in the map or the real-time information that is on the ground to the team, and they will be able to put this information to you. This is why we are in the actual middle of the intersection between all of those types of users that reach out to us and upload information to the map. This is what the team is doing.
And don't forget too that like oftentimes the crisis team might know about something before you do. They're monitoring the news and the feeds from the partners 24/7. So they might have caught something and are already on top of it before you even have a chance to notify them. But of course, if you do have some, amazing local knowledge that can help people in the crisis, send it straight to the crisis team on that email address. And another from Alan. During Virginia's large snowstorm in January, the closures team shut down I-95 South for a week. It would be useful for reaching out to local editors. Caught this one early on, but had 3 separate VDOT employees reach out to me to reopen shortly after we removed, since Google still had it closed. So I see. So I would assume the closures team probably shut down that section based on information that was faulty that they had gotten from the partner, because that would come through an order from the partners team, right?
Yeah, I agree. And also, yes, so you can, I'm not sure, Alan, if you reached out to the team and asked them to do that. But we usually work very closely with the local editors to understand what is happening on the ground. But, we're not perfect. So we might sometimes have issues since we are dealing with extreme weather or with natural disasters. But we do make sure that we do the best job that we can to put that right information on the map.
And like she said, if you ever see anything that is incorrect, make sure you let the closures team know ASAP, because there's someone monitoring that line 24/7. So if from Ingo, I hope I said that right. I'm really sorry if I butchered your name. If there's a possibility for Wazers when the last route ends in a crisis zone, maybe a flood, to send a push notification and warn them.
So as I mentioned previously, so push notifications and generally the way that we communicate with users during crisis events is a very delicate and sensitive way of communication. We need to make sure that we send the most useful information and making them being mindful about what's happening. You can always send a request to the team if you feel that something is happening and users around that area needs to know what is happening. But yeah, so always feel free to contact the Waze Crisis team to ask these kind of questions, and the team will respond and let you know if this is something that we can do.
And I also just want to note again that the way that the polygons are set up, that if it's an evacuation polygon or a crisis zone, that you won't be routed to that area. You might have to necessarily be routed through it, like if you're in southern Florida and trying to get out of a hurricane zone and you have to pass through others, but your final destination won't be in the closed polygon. And I also have some updates that I'd like to share on some previous questions. So first, on the contraflow to traffic, unfortunately, that's not possible for us to have contraflow to traffic. I'll follow up with more info on that, by the way, in the forum after we get off. But just so you know that that's not possible. And also, we don't use evacuation zones during snowstorms. And most likely, we think what you meant was routing people around heavily snowed in areas. So for that, offline reports really work the best. So I think that you should continue to use your reports. If you lose connectivity, the offline reporting will show up as soon as you regain connectivity. And for the evacuation zones, we're not going to send you into the middle of evacuation zone, so you don't have to worry about that. Do we have any more questions? I think this was our last one. Let's see if there's anything in chat. I see a few different feature requests for a radius tool for adding emergency closures for a chemical spill. That's actually pretty interesting from Chris. And it's easy to get data on the roads being closed. It's hard to get data saying the road has been opened back up.
Right. Yeah. But once a road is opened back up, you will just be able to route through it. You will be able to see that on the map. And if we see that drivers are driving through the closed roads, we're just activating this road as open. So yeah, and just like to emphasize the way that evacuation zones are working, we can route users into evacuation zone. Like a user can decide that he wants to route into a destination that it is in an active evacuation zone. Only preloaded evacuation zones will not able users to route to them. So it is a sensitive feature. It is like we can activate and deactivate it during a crisis event, but we can enable users to route to an active evacuation zone.
And here's a follow-up too. John wrote that he thinks what Alan might have been asking was if it's possible to let the local champs know when Waze Crisis shuts down major roads that we're aware. Well, the best way to do that is to sign up as a first responder, because then the Waze Crisis team will be in touch with you immediately before even they shut down roads. So let's, Danit, can you please add the first responder form back into chat just one more time so we have it here? I'll also put it on the forum later. And if that's all, I really want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I want to thank Anat for being our special guest and teaching us more about how Waze Crisis works, and more importantly, how you all can get involved to help your local community. And finally, I want to remind you all one more time, in 3 weeks, April 24th, Steph Hannon, Waze's new CPO, is coming on for a very special Q&A session. Please sign up. Please submit your questions. Stump her bad. No, I'm kidding. Don't stump her bad. She's brand new on the job. She's only been here for like a month or two. So go easy on her, but make it fun. She's super excited to meet all of you out in the community. And we're excited to introduce you to another one of the leaders of Waze who, hint, hint, is in charge of all of our product decisions. So if you want to know what's on the roadmap for the coming year, you're not going to want to miss this session in 3 weeks. So again, Thank you so much, Anat, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
I know that you have one of those jobs where people don't always want to hear from you because it's the crisis, but
Yeah.
I hope now that we put a face to the name that everyone out there is going to appreciate a little bit more the work that you do and hopefully want to get involved and be first responders as well. And with that, I want to thank all of you again for joining us. I want to thank Danit for being an amazing producer and keeping us on track all evening. And we'll see you on the 24th when we interview Steph. So have a great day and a great week, everybody.